Hey there. Welcome to the Adoption Roadmap podcast, where we talk about navigating the adoption process and beyond. Before we get into the episode, here's a quick word from today's sponsor.
Listen up, Roadmap fans. Do you have a transracial family? Maybe you've struggled to find the right products for your child's hair and skin. You're not alone. But listen, I found your solution. If you're anything like me and care about clean, natural products without harsh chemicals, you've got to check out Sweet Peach Tree. It was founded by a white mom with a black daughter who gets it. They've created safe, effective products made for melanin rich skin and textured hair, but it's not just for them, it's for the entire family. Head to sweetpeachtree.com and use code ROADMAP10 for 10% off your first order. Sweetpeachtree.com. Use the code ROADMAP10 for 10% off your first order. Sweet Peach Tree, made with your family in mind.
Welcome back to our episode with Michelle Madrid. In part 1, Michelle shared about how adoption didn't erase her first chapter, it buried it. She talked about identity, healing, and why adoptees are never a blank slate. If you haven't listened yet, we highly recommend going back before diving into part 2.
I want to go back to your name for a minute. The name that you were given at birth. There are many families who change the name of a child once they adopt their child, and there are others who keep the name of who the birth mother, the name that the birth mother, the birth parents gave, and there are other people who come up with the name together. How did you feel toward your parents, or did you ever have that conversation or question them, or what did that do to your sense of identity, knowing you were named one thing and then when you were placed for adoption, your parents changed that name?
I used to say, I love my name now, Michelle.
Mhm.
I'm Michelle. But when I was younger, I used to say it's kind of like squeezing my foot in a shoe that doesn't quite fit. Just feels odd. Like I have to practice it. And um, I here's what I think. And it goes back to the first chapter in the first me. I think there's an honoring of that person, that little one that needs to be included in the name. You can weave in um, another name. You can add that too. But I really believe if you have that information, to consider weaving it in because it is an honoring of their first story, their first self, their first chapter. And that's one of the, I think, the first things that we can do to let them know we honor all of you.
Mm.
I've done that. I did that with both of my children, and they sort of switch back between their Ethiopian and then their name by adoption. That's all woven in together. Everything has story and meaning, and I always say it's yours to choose. This is the complexity and the beauty of the adoptee journey, and it is yours to choose. It is your story, and I want you to live it as true to you. And if we don't know, then we don't know, right? But if we have that information, I think it's a beautiful honoring of your child and their fullest story. I hope that helps. Does that answer the
Oh,
question?
it helps a lot. And I'm just wondering, to those parents who maybe are struggling with that and are having a really hard time with giving their child the choice or following their child's lead, what might you say to them or ask them about that so that maybe they can see it in a different way?
Well, as a mother, when I look at my children, I want them to know that they are free to be who they are here to be, that there are I don't have any hardline rules about what you honor, how you can feel. I want them to know that you are safe to explore every corner of yourself
Mhm.
without judgment. And that's, for me, it goes back to a name. I want them to feel so comfortable in who they are,
Mm.
and in their skin. And if that name, if speaking that name, if going by their, original name, helps them to stay connected to that part of themselves, by all means, do it.
Yeah.
For me as a mother, and we have those conversations, and they know that as a mother, I wanted to honor their story, their birth parents, with keeping their given names. And I also wanted to honor this 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 journey of adoption that we are on together.
Mhm.
And I don't want there to be a break in it. I think that's what I felt as an adoptee when my name was changed and Julia Dawn was never mentioned. That there was a severing that was too deep, and it was too sharp, and it hurt. I didn't want to be severed from her. And I don't want my kids to feel severed from that part of themselves as well. And so if a name is one way for them to reconnect, then by all means, I want them to have that as well. Does that
Yeah.
answer?
Did you feel anger towards your parents?
Um, I felt, uh, it was confusion that I felt. And I also felt like there was something they were holding back, because why would you change my name if somehow there was something attached to it that was not good or dirty, or something that needed to be hidden? So
Hmm.
those were the
Interesting.
quiet wonderings in my mind that I really probably never brought out into the light with them. But I
Mm.
remember thinking very distinctly, there must be something wrong with her,
Mm.
because she's been completely erased. And there was never anything wrong with Julia Dawn.
Wow.
She's an innocent child who was in the circumstance, no fault of her own. People made choices, and it shifted her life, but she was innocent in it all. And I want my children to understand that too. This is not of your doing, right? This is something that has happened, circumstances, choices that have been made, but we are going to honor every single corner of it all the way through. And that includes the
That
name.
is so important to understand for adoptive parents, which is when things aren't talked about, when something like a name change or the narrative that our children will give themselves will make it about them when it has nothing to do with them and everything about you.
Yeah.
And one thing I tell all of our families after they adopt is you chose adoption. And so now this journey does not become about you, but about them.
Yeah.
And so what does that mean? And when you are triggered by anything, by having somebody refer to a birth mom as mom, her other
Mhm.
mom, her first mom, does that trigger you? If so, pay attention to those
Yeah.
and go work on that. But I think that's so important to know that when things aren't addressed, when things get changed, our children are going to give themselves their own narrative. And
Yeah.
it's probably going to be one that you wish they didn't have.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I didn't go around saying,
Mm,
when I was growing up, I'm a mistake, I'm a mistake. I didn't go around
right.
saying that, but it scripted my life. It scripted my thoughts, my beliefs, my behaviors. It scripted everything. So the more open the more we can relate to our children, guide our children with openness, the better off they're going to be. And it is about them. At the end of the day, it is about them. And understanding our own triggers, and that's not to be judged. We all have those things that have happened, those little tears to, trauma. I heard someone say not too long ago that their definition of trauma was a tear to the soul.
Mm,
We all have those. We all
yeah.
have little tears to the soul, and it can trigger us in different ways, these tears. And being aware of that is so key, and doing the work to heal those parts of ourselves is absolutely essential. We can show up better for ourselves and for our kids. And my kids say real mom,
Mm,
biological mom, birth, all the time, and absolutely right on. She was the first, and I love her,
yeah.
and we do this together. We do this together in spirit. I think of those women every day. My daughter's going to be 16 soon, and I think of her mother and her father and her ancestors, and I invite them along because there is an energy with that.
Mm-hmm.
Not to get woo woo, but energy enters the room before our energy enters the room before we do. You've ever heard someone say, ooh, that's a weird energy, right?
Uh-huh.
That's because our energies are just that powerful. And
Yeah.
I really believe when we send out positive, loving, open energy, it is felt, and it we can become immersed in that goodness, and it changes us on a cellular level. It just does. And I want my kids to always feel that. And I'm a stepmom too, and you know what? Never said a negative word about
Yeah.
their mothers. That's their mothers. I honor that. And I
Yeah.
love those girls. They're adults now, and I love them. My eldest son is biological, and he knows my story. He knows the tears to my soul that happened along
Mm-hmm.
this very human experience as an adoptee. We talk about it. Openness is key. I'm not perfect. I'm a human walking this journey, and it comes with its bumps and its dings. But oh my goodness, I am so willing to step into its scars, flaws, and all, and say, here I am. I'm willing to learn. And I want my kids to see that too.
100%. In
Mhm.
your book, you identify a number of pain points adoptees carry.
Mhm.
Can you highlight a few of those and what adoptive parents can do to help their children work through them, perhaps?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I felt that was important, and along my journey of um, supporting and reaching out to adoptees, um, coaching them, I just started to identify what seemed to be the most common pain points that showed up,
Yeah.
and I list them in the book. And the first is the pain of feeling unwelcome in the world. And again, it's not something we necessarily go around and say out loud, but it scripts our lives.
Yeah.
That somehow we're just not fully welcome here. We're someone's secret, maybe we're someone's mistake, and we feel like we have to live in the shadows of our own lives. That's a very strong one that shows up. I just don't feel welcome into the life I've been given.
I've heard it as I don't belong here.
Yeah, yeah. I don't belong here. I feel like a
Mhm.
foreigner in my own life. Those kind of those kind of words are used, and it is very real. We have an exercise in the book of welcoming yourself into your life, and it's very profound because when you do that, and I did that sitting in a field in the United Kingdom. I used to think I had to have someone else's permission to come home. I was sitting in a field in England a few years ago. It started to rain. The grasses were really tall, and everything, the air felt smelled so fresh. And I started to cry. And what just came to me on the breeze that day was, you don't need anyone else's permission but your own. You are welcome here. And I recorded that. I spoke to myself out loud, and said, I am welcome here. I am welcome home. And I will never seek that permission outside of myself again. It's changed everything. It's changed the energy of how I land in London and walk out into the country that, I come from. I think the another one you want me to highlight, maybe I'll highlight three. Um, the pain of distrust
Mm.
is huge because the questions arise with adoptees is if I can't even trust the person who brought me into the world, if they leave, How can I trust that everyone won't leave, that everything is fragile and that love can go away? And there's just a level of not trusting. And that actually manifests in even not trusting ourselves, our own thoughts, our own desires, our own dreams,
Mm-hmm.
second guessing ourselves in our lives. I did that for a really long time because I just didn't trust my own ability to make decisions in my life. And I didn't trust relationships. I was always going out in front of myself, trying to figure out how to make it work so I wouldn't be left or rejected, that I would be loved. And oftentimes I showed up as someone who was not authentically me, you know?
Yeah. I was going to bring up relationships as a, some people will sabotage a relationship so that they're
Yeah.
always the first person to leave.
Yeah. Oh, that
Um,
was me.
yeah,
Yeah,
I've heard
that
that
was
one a
me.
lot.
It was a way to stay safe. And, I have a lot of compassion for that young lady because she was just trying to stay safe,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But I learned that trust starts with me and my own knowing, my own intuition. Relationships can feel a lot safer when you're connected to your intuitive self, right? And when you listen to that and you pay attention if your gut instinct says this is not good for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to force this. You can make a pivot or make a different decision. I think that trust level, that trust element starts with us. It starts within, and that was very pivotal for me. I just think also, yeah, the pain of pleasing others versus pleasing the self. I was
Mm-hmm.
such, so oftentimes I hear adoptees saying that, yeah, I'm a people pleaser, I'm a chronic people pleaser, and I was too. And um, I journal a lot, and I once journal. I have it here just because I have this right next to me. If I just make everyone else happy, maybe no one will ever see what a mistake I am.
Oof.
And I
Wow.
that was me for a very long time. I was the people pleaser. I don't speak my desires, my true thoughts. I shrink. I clip my own wings so someone else can fly, so they will love me, and they
Yeah.
won't see what a mistake I am, what it innately, you know. And when you feel that broken on the inside, it's a level of suffering that I don't wish upon anyone. And it does start, like you said, my beautiful friend, with that openness that starts young, that starts so young, and having conversations that are supportive and safe with our young adoptees, so that they know, and we always do it, in a way that honors where they are in their lives, right? Whether they're 5, it's going to look different when they're 15, like my daughter is now. That the conversations are different, they evolve, but that place of openness is so key. You
Mhm.
don't have to earn my love. You don't have to earn anyone else's love. You are enough. I had a therapist, actually she was a coach. She said to me one day, this is several years ago, Michelle, if you just sat in the chair that you're in right now and you did nothing else for the rest of your life but breathe, you would be enough.
Mhm.
And that really touched me. And I thought, wow, I've never considered that. I always thought I got to earn it. I got to go out and prove it. That's exhausting. No, I'm enough
Yeah.
right here, right now, as I am, with my story, with all of it. I'm enough. And I think that is so important for adoptees to hear. You don't have to prove your worth. You are worthy. You are enough. And one thing, I'll just stop on a fourth one, that pain of being denied access to truth, I think is a big
Mm.
one. Of
Yes.
feeling locked out of our own stories, the truth of our own stories, of not
Mhm.
knowing, um, is a very painful thing. I when I got my foster records several years ago, this is probably oh my gosh, this is probably 15 years or so ago. It took me 9 months to get my own foster records. And I had to prove that I was mentally, able to
Mm.
read. my own story and emotionally able and all of that. And once I got them, it was just such a relief because I also saw that my birth parents were very real people. They were
Mm,
flawed. They made
mm,
mistakes. Oh wow. I had built them up and although I had reunited with them, it was just like staring me in black and white. It was different. The fantasy as a child that I created around them.
yeah.
And just to read some of their story in those files that they had never shared with me, that had never been shared with me. And I saw them as real flawed people. And I thought they were even more beautiful. Oh, they weren't perfect.
Mm,
I wasn't broken and because they were these perfect people and I was this broken, flawed little girl they needed to get away, they needed to hide me away. No, they, like me, are flawed, real people. And I loved them more. I didn't love them less.
I love that.
Mm,
When we don't have conversations with our children, a narrative is made up that you
yeah,
are saying a lot in your silence. And we you don't want that for your child. So we have to have those conversations. And you know what? You were talking about a lack of information. And as hard as it is for a child to hear, it's sometimes even harder for a parent to tell, to
yeah,
speak, because we want to innately protect our children. And we are not protecting them by keeping information, by not having conversations, by, you know, we're not protecting them by withholding.
right.
And I think that's so important to
And
hear.
in their own time too, because I do have my son who is from Russia is just turned 21. I
Okay.
can't believe that. And I have, we talk about his, what we know when he asks questions to me. Oftentimes it's to me because he will say to me, "I'm so glad you're adopted and you understand."
Yeah.
And it's such a beautiful thing, connection that we have.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I have a file of all his information, everything. And he knows that I have it. And I say, it's yours, it's not mine, but I will safely keep it for you until you're ready to take it and carry it with you along your journey and open it up and look at it and read it. But it has to be in your time, not my time. But it's here and he knows. He's seen the envelope and he knows I've packed it all together with love and that everything that I know is in there and that is part of his first chapter and it's
Yeah.
waiting for him when he's ready. And I think that's the offering as parents we can give our children,
Yeah.
that we have safely curated this information for them and we have lovingly organized it, however that looks, right? And it is theirs, but we will safeguard it until they're ready.
That's such a gift. It's going to make me go back through some old emails.
Yeah.
What does ambiguous loss mean to you?
It's a loss that society doesn't deem as important enough to talk about or recognize. It's this loss of, for instance, Julia Dawn, the first me. Um, I lost her somewhere
Mm,
along the way, but I wasn't able to talk about that. And there was a grieving that happened internally alone in isolation by myself that no one knew about. The truth of the matter is, I lost my first parents. That is a tremendous loss in a child's life.
mm,
But what I heard growing up was, oh, you should just be grateful. You're so fortunate. Your parents, oh my goodness, they're amazing to do something like this.
mm.
How amazing it is for them to take you in. And it wasn't that I didn't feel that too, but I also felt this grief, this that was so real for me. And I couldn't give voice to it because I didn't believe there was space for it in my world.
Yeah.
To me, that's ambiguous grief, ambiguous loss. We just don't think that it's really that. It's like saying, the cup I'm holding isn't really a cup, something else. But no, it's a cup. Or yes, no, it's grief that I feel and it's real and it needs to be tended to. It needs to be compassionately looked at, and I need help and I need support, and I need to know I can come to you, mom and dad, with all of it, real, raw, true. And I need to be able to say, I miss them and I don't know why, if that's real for your child, you know,
Yeah.
and for you to be able to receive that and hold space for that. Our kids need that. I needed that growing up, you know. I'm giving it to myself now, but I will absolutely make sure that I'm giving that to my kids. And I am imperfect and I am a flawed parent and I, you know, we're all trying to figure it out. But I understand that the grief they feel, the wonderings they have are so real. My daughter recently wrote a poem for English class and she wanted to read it to me. And
Mm.
it was so beautiful. It
You're
was
so
so
lucky that she
beautiful.
wanted to read it to you.
Oh, I know. She came in and she said, "What do you think?" And it was about the wind and how the wind shifts and blows, and it doesn't really necessarily ask where it's supposed to necessarily be rooted, but it finds its way. And I'm probably blowing the whole sentiment of this beautiful and incredible poem, but it was her wondering of her unique journey as an adoptee and akinning herself like to the wind, and how powerful and beautiful it is and how imperfect it can be, right? But ultimately, it has a message and it finds its way. And it was just beautiful. And it's in those moments that I see so very clearly that she's finding her way as an adoptee
Yeah.
and as a young woman in this world, but she's finding her way and she's using her talents to find her way. I will never step in the way of that. I just say, right on. You keep going. You
Yeah.
listen to the wind, my love. Listen to the wind. Let it tell you, let it guide you. And share this poem with your classmates and with your teacher, because it's beautiful. And it is her story. It is her story. And she's telling it and sharing it in her own unique way. And I think that's beautiful.
I love that. And I just want to reiterate again, these are not things that your children are just going to come to you and say, you know what, mom, I really miss my birth parents.
Hmm.
No, you have to ask questions. You have to bring it up, because if you're
Yeah.
not bringing it up, again, it goes back to there is something wrong with this. This is not to be talked about.
Yeah.
So don't just sit and say, oh, I was always open if they wanted to come. But did you make that known? on a,
Yeah.
on the regular, right? Not just
Absolutely.
once,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
consistently.
Yeah.
Also, not every day.
Right, right, right. No, exactly. But in those moments, you can, even just, I want you to know I'm here. I'm here.
Yeah.
That's, it means the world to an
Yeah.
adoptee. I'm here. I'm here.
You've been open about another trauma that you grew up with, which was
Mm-hmm.
having a father who struggled with alcoholism.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see adoption related grief intersecting with other family traumas? Because let's face it, unfortunately, you're not the only one dealing with multiple traumas, and this
Yeah.
this happens.
Yeah.
How did you how did that intersect for you?
Ooh, it compounded my confusion.
Mm,
I think it, also my sense of isolation and unworthiness, because what I really desired, I wanted a daddy who adored me.
yeah.
And what I saw, my experience in the world, was my first father left. Um,
Mhm.
Apparently stated in a pub when he met with my birth mother's husband. He said, "I don't want to know when the child is born." Now, I I pushed back on that a little bit, because after he had passed and I found my biological brother Andre. Andre told me that a month before our father passed, he said, "I have a daughter out there somewhere,"
Oh,
which
wow.
means that my father did know that he had had a daughter, and that he thought about me probably all of his life,
Gives me
in the
chills.
deepest parts of his soul. And that, coming from my brother Andre in Spain when we met there, um, it meant everything to me. It
Yeah.
was my father speaking to me through him.
Mm.
Um, but I used to have fantasies that he would come and find me and save me. I had um, this connection with him I didn't learn until after he'd passed. He loved dandelions too. I love dandelions. I used to blow on them in the fields
Mm.
when I was a little girl where I lived in America. And my brother Andre said, oh, he used to stand on the bridge in Cordova, Spain, and blow on dandelions and watch them
Oh
float
my
on
goodness.
the stream below. Um, I desired his love in the physical. I didn't get that, but I definitely feel it in the spiritual. But what happened, I think, being adopted into a family with a father who struggled with alcohol addiction was I just felt that I wasn't worthy of a father's love. And my dad was harsh. He didn't, um, he used words like a weapon. His words were all often um, they cut so deep when he would be in these states. And I spent my childhood just trying to stay out of his way and staying invisible because he had a very short trigger and he could go off. And when he went off, it was usually at me or my mom because we were there. And I think that his struggle, again, it only increased my level of confusion and my sense of unworthiness and my belief that fathers just go away
Mm.
and I can't rely on a father. And my dad was a complicated man. And toward the end of his life, and about the time that I had my first child, my eldest son, um, that changed my father. He was the most doting grandfather you can
Hmm.
imagine, and he had, for the most part, toward the latter years of his life, stopped drinking, and he loved his grandchildren deeply. And I always say to my kids, I'd do it all again if you could have the grandfather that you had.
Hmm.
And I'd go through all of it. If that was the journey, then it was worth it to me for you to have the
Wow.
grandfather that you had that you think about so fondly, you know. But for me, it was a tough growing up because my dad just he was hard, and alcohol consumed him, and it became my job to like pour out the bottles before I went to
Mm.
school because my mother would ask me to do that so that the bottles would be gone. But by the end of the day, there'd just be new bottles there. It was just a lot. I think a lot was put on my shoulders that was very, very unhealthy.
Wow.
Um, and it was just another layer of, I think, abandonment that I had to work through in my own life because emotionally, my dad just wasn't there for me growing up. And so I felt like my first father abandoned me physically, and my adoptive father abandoned me emotionally. He was there in the house,
Yeah.
but you just had to get clear, get clear of him. And there was no emotional connection there at all.
Yeah.
And that is something that I look back on and I wish I could change, but I know that I can't. But I always have to ask myself, what was it there to show me? How was it there to grow me? What was it trying to teach me? And I can only look back now and see the lessons. And really goes back to my ability to parent myself, to love myself, and to do this work of healing and forgiving. Because, my goodness, um, I got to forgive because that's how I set myself free. And I have done that work. I've forgiven my father for all of that. And he, was never someone who was going to say, I'm sorry. But he doesn't have to. I've forgiven him and it set me free. And I will say it is so important as parents for us to understand that this inner work that we do, this healing, this awareness that is so key. Yes, we must do that for ourselves. And what we change within us will shift the energy outside of us. And it's so important. I wish my dad had had the tools. He just didn't.
Yeah.
He just didn't have the tools. And I, I think I got to that point of forgiveness when I was actually at a Tony Robbins event, and Tony was saying that we have to see that child within, right? That child that needs healing. My dad went through a lot of trauma as a kid. He lost his father at the age of, I think,
Mm.
11. So when I began to see my dad as that young boy, that hurt little boy,
Yeah.
and the only way he could he could deal with the hurt was to numb himself through alcohol. I had a huge amount of compassion for
Yeah.
that little boy, and it was that at that point where I was able to forgive him, because I can forgive the
Mm.
child who's hurting. I can do that.
You've done a lot of work, as you've talked about. Had you done a lot of work before you decided to adopt? What made you decide adoption was how you were
Yeah.
going to grow your family after everything you had been through?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I was doing that work, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I don't know, I'd had Christian, and I think this is an interesting question, because I don't know if there was ever this I'm going to adopt. It evolved in my life. And I was so open to it. And in part it was, I'm open to this. I live it. And what might I be able to give as a parent to a child who's in a similar situation that I was in?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I did not save my children. I am not a savior. I am flawed, but this is what has happened in my life, and I am so grateful. I am grateful for it. These kids are amazing. I'm in awe of them, and I learn from them, and we learn from each other. And so I believe it was it was organic. It happened, and I was open to it. And I believe there's power in that. I believe I didn't
Yeah.
do it in like a forceful way. I'm going to do this, and just it came to me, and doors opened in ways that I can't even necessarily explain, and here they are. Um, and I I'm sure that people have questions about that as an adoptee who has adopted, but I can only say, um, it's hard to judge another until you're really standing in their experience and the intimacy of a family.
Mm-hmm.
As hard as it is, it's beautiful, beautiful. It's heart wrenching. It's everything. It's life affirming. This family that has been woven together in part through adoption, and to see these kids love each other and respect our individuality and our uniqueness, and to be there for each other. Um, it's been a beautiful journey to witness and be a part of. I'm very, very grateful.
I love that. Speaking of woven, I know
Yeah.
you use the quilt metaphor instead of a family tree, which I love. Can you
Thank you.
explain why that imagery feels more accurate for adoptees and adoptive families? I love this because I know our listeners will be able to take something really tactical back to their children's schools. So,
Oh,
talk,
good. I hope so.
yeah,
Because goodness, this came from my own personal experience as a kid in school, and that family tree project came
yeah. And it's
across.
there. It's
It is,
still
and it's
there
there.
in
It's
some
still
way. It
there.
comes up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And I just struggled with it. And I didn't know how to express my perception, my belief, my experience with family through a family tree. Like I really struggled with that. And I went to my teacher and said, I can't do this. And she's like, well, why? And I
Hmm.
explained. And she said, well, what is family to you then? And I said, well, it's like a quilt. And one of my adoptive grandmothers made quilts, and I used to always think, wow, when I would see them, that reminds me of my family, because and it goes back to the way my children, I feel all of my children honor each other and their unique journeys and differences and where they're from and their stories, so unique. But that to me is a quilt. We take different pieces of fabric, different colors, different textures, different origins, and we weave them together to create a tapestry that honors all of it without minimizing or diminishing any of it. It just works together to create something beautiful that didn't
Yes.
exist before. And to me, that makes more sense than a family tree when it comes to the adoptee experience.
I love that. I think that's
Yeah.
such a beautiful,
Thank you.
that's
So I was
beautiful.
able to create not an actual quilt, but with different like pieces of paper and everything. I created a quilt on a poster board, and she let me do that, which I really appreciated at the time when people really weren't even talking about adoption, you
That's
know.
fabulous.
She let me do that. So thank you for asking that question.
Yeah. How can people find your book? And is it for both adoptees and adoptive parents? And how can people work with you if you even work with
Yeah.
people all over? Tell us everything.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Instagram at the Michelle Madrid. My website is themichellemadrid.com. You can find my book or information about my book there at themichellemadrid.com. You can also find it on Amazon. Let Us Be Greater. And this book is, yes, it is for adoptees. It is for adoptive parents, anyone who cherishes, loves an adoptee.
Mm,
And non-adoptees have found a lot of usefulness in this book too, because at the end of the day, it is about coming home to ourselves,
mm,
which is the greatest journey of all. It is about
absolutely.
the ending of self-abandonment and the stepping into our truest identity and loving ourselves, scars, flaws, and all. That's the theme of the book, woven around, yes, for adoptees, written by an adoptee, but something that I think many can find um, a part of themselves in. And I actively coach each and every day adult adoptees, primarily adult adopted women, and also women in midlife, because here I am. I'm in midlife. I'm
Here
a
we are.
midlife adoptee woman. Here we are. It happens.
Hear us roar.
Hear us roar. Absolutely. And you know what I find in this time of life, adoptee or non-adoptee for women, the boxes, as I like to call them, those invisible boxes where we've hidden away parts of ourselves over time, over the years, start to rattle in this
Mm,
midlife convergence when we're dealing with a whole heck of a lot. And the grief that we can feel, whether it's that sense of loss of identity or fleeting time, or the questions of who am I now, what's next for me, I believe that those emotions are flashlights pointing us to what needs to be tended to within.
mm,
And so that's sort of the framework I use for adoptees and non-adopted women who come to me in this season. We use this unbox framework to get really clear, to identify what that box is and the patterns of belief, emotional patterns, behavior patterns that have seeded themselves, that are sort of on autopilot, on repeat. And how do we break those patterns and move forward in our lives? All of that is explored in what I'm doing. And it all started with that little girl, Julia Dawn, way, way,
mm,
way, way back, um, who has never left me, and who, thank God, I recognized I couldn't do it alone. I need her. And here we are together today, um, doing the work and doing it for ourselves and helping others along the way, which is a huge honor for me.
mm. Michelle Julia Don Madrid. Love it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Um, this has been amazing. So many golden nuggets. I think it's so important for adoptive parents to hear the voices of adoptees and what we can do to help them be a full, complete human and embrace their identity and what that might mean for us in that journey as well. So I thank you for sharing all of that. But before you go, I do have a couple quick fire round questions.
Okay.
The first is give a shout out to one person or organization that's influenced your adoption journey or the work you're doing in adoption.
Oh my goodness. Heart Gallery, New Mexico, Heart Gallery of New Mexico Foundation. I have been broken wide open through working with them and helping to bring awareness to the very challenging experience of being a child placed in the system,
Yeah.
as I was in the United Kingdom, and to support those kids and also to support the ones who are aging out without having been adopted. Their stories, their resilience is awe-inspiring to me. So I would say Heart Gallery of New Mexico Foundation, which I am on the board, I must say, but it has been a beautiful, beautiful journey and experience being a part of that community and seeing again the resilience and the tenderness of these kids is it just it literally breaks my heart and breaks it open in ways that have expanded my own understanding. That was a long answer.
That's okay. Yeah. For sometimes people, spend another 15 minutes on these quick fires. What's one piece of advice you'd like to share with adoptive parents or hopeful adoptive parents?
um, Stay open. Openness. Openness is, and when we've touched on this, openness is key. Love them as they are and love all of them. Reach
Mm,
back into their first chapter. Know that there's a first me inside of them, no matter their age, that they feel pulsing within them, and just work to embrace all of it. And try to really stay in that place of openness. We learn a lot from our kids, and um, I think that's a beautiful gift. If we understand, we learn from each other.
What's one thing you wish every adoptive parent knew before they brought their child home?
That those little ones are not a blank slate. They enter the world with a whole
Mm,
lot of information, and honor that, and know that that's very real. The inner workings of what they already know, it's there, it's real, and we have to keep the doors open, um, and we have to create that safe, sacred space for them to come explore with us. Absolutely.
describe adoption in 3 words.
Oh my goodness! In 3 words, it's okay. Now you're gonna get me to cry. Adoption is hard. It is. Um, it's hard. It is a journey, and it is. These are not just 3 words, but it can be the pathway to finding out more of you than you ever imagined. Um, and I believe ultimately at the end of the day, as an adoptee in my 5th decade of life, it can be a superpower. It can be a superpower.
Adoption is not just a destination, it's a journey filled with love, resilience, and growth. Wherever you are on this roadmap, trust in your path, stay open to learning, and always lead with your heart. You already have everything you need to create a beautiful story for your family. And when the road takes unexpected detours, I'm here to help you navigate every turn along the adoption roadmap. Michelle, thank you so much for being with us today. You are a light in this universe, and I am so glad to have you in my life.
I love you. And likewise, I'm so grateful for you, my friend.
Bye-bye.